A lack in security, without a doubt. And particularly in that morning up at the gym.
This veteran Columbia Correctional Prison guard is risking all to talk to Channel 12 about what went wrong the day Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson were murdered. He says the list of mistakes is long.
Those two should have never been even housed in the same unit, let alone be assigned to the same work crew.
This guard says it was common knowledge that Christopher Scarver had threatened Jeffrey Dahmer in the past and can't understand why they were allowed to work together.
Scarver's on the cleaning room. He probably got the routine of the day officer. It's not that hard to do. Found an opportunity or a lax part of the security and went ahead and did with it.
This guard says the day of the murders, security was lax. 2 guards and a director were assigned to the gym that day, but this guard tells us the director was in a back office. One of the guards was missing, and the second guard?
The officer in the bubble. My understanding, he was jamming to the music inside the bubble and just wasn't paying attention. He was, I guess, just talking on the phone, listening to the music, and had his head down.
And according to this guard, that's when Scarver attacked Dahmer, taking him by surprise. He says Scarver then walked past the preoccupied officer in the control bubble to get to Anderson. Anderson apparently tried to get help.
There's a lot of blood. So much as blood that there was 2 handprints on the window that looks in from the officer's control bubble into the shower room. And they were up high and they ran all the way down, full of blood all the way to the floor. And it was at least trying to get the officer's attention, and the officer wasn't doing his job.
And the murder weapon? The guard tells us it was a piece of metal from weightlifting equipment.
After he did this with Jesse Anderson, he went back into the weight room. 1 or 2 other inmates possibly helped clean up the weapon. They placed it back onto the weight machine. Scarver then had walked past the officer again in the control bubble and returned back to his housing unit without being escorted.
These are the men believed to have helped Scarver. Like Scarver, Roy Chester Holman and Kenneth Figures are being held in isolation and questioned about the attack. In fact, this guard says the men met in a common room the day before the murders where they talked for up to an hour. This guard believes they were plotting murder.
I had a conversation for approximately half hour to an hour in depth about this, and the next day they both showed up at recreation building. I really believe it was planned.
The inmates are 31-year-old Roy Chester Holman, a Milwaukee man jailed at Columbia since 1989, and 37-year-old Kenneth Figures. Figures is from Chicago, but was convicted in Milwaukee County Court in 1989. Like Christopher Scarver, both inmates are being held in isolation here at Columbia, interrogated about their roles in the murders of Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson, suspected of conspiring with Christopher Scarver. Scarver's attorneys traveled to Columbia to meet with their client and to determine whether Christopher Scarver has been singled out as the lone killer.
In a pre-trial and pre-charging situation, to have your client singled out, given the media attention that Mr. Scarver has been given, yet creates problems in a defense that otherwise would not be there.
With that in mind, we do ask the court to allow us to withdraw the not guilty and not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect pleas.
A more subdued Christopher Scarver sat next to his attorney, Steve Cohn, telling the judge with his change in plea he is giving up his right to a trial.
Is it correct that at this time you wish to withdraw that plea?
Yes.
Scarver had pleaded not guilty and not guilty by mental disease or defect in the beating deaths of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer and wife murderer Jesse Anderson. At that time, Scarver said God told him to do it. As part of the plea agreement, Scarver's attorney says his client will now get the help he needs, being transferred from a state prison to a federal medical facility.
I believe that Mr. Scarver's wishes have been accommodated.
It's an issue that's been the burr under the city's saddle since 1992. What to do with the property Jeffrey Dahmer once called home at 25th and Kilbourne? The proposition? a playground.
I think everybody has heard enough of the Dahmer situation, and I think it's time for healing and time for the community to work together to build something positive, and that's what all of us are trying to do.
This is typically what the city does when they want to take back a neighborhood. Put up a tot lot like this one, 47th and Vliet. But the neighborhood they want to take back next faces some particularly difficult obstacles, like the property's connection with notorious serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer.
I guess our basic feeling is that the building is gone, that energy is gone, and we want to create positive energy and momentum here, and that's what this is all about.
The Campus Circle Development Association is raising money for the project. Plans are drawn up. $50,000 has been raised, $150,000 to go. Feelings about the plan are the talk of the neighborhood.
I think we should have a playground over there in the back so we can play basketball and play and swing on the swing.
Because it's too much negativity on around here for kids to be out. A lot of shooting and gang activity. So I think it's real bad.
The folks at Campus Circle say the park would be a victory over violence and the continuation of healing. Annie Schwartz, Channel 12 News, Milwaukee.
One thing many people find upsetting is that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is right next door. The side of the church building is a garden wall at number 25, and at first churchgoers were worried in case some bodies were buried beneath the place where they worshipped every Saturday.
As we heard the police were discovering bodies next door to the church, we also heard through the press that they were thinking the bodies had been put there in the 1970s. That meant that we were not concerned about the church building in any way, because the church building had been there since at least the 60s, if not before. As I spoke to the older members of the church, without exception, there was an attitude coming from them that said, this tells us that the church needs to be here more than ever. The situation had strengthened their faith because they saw in these tragic events, these terrible events, just a little indication that Jesus is coming soon. The church, as it looks ahead, wants to try and become a centre for the community in Cromwell Street. Having said that, there doesn't seem to be a strong feeling of community in and around Cromwell Street.